when people read what we're going to be talking about, I think they feel like, okay, this is a story about a couple who had a child conceived in rape, and it feels like, oh, okay, we don't want to hear this. But it's not going to be a depressing story. This is a story of beauty for ashes. This is a story of redemption. And basically what it comes down to is a love story between a mother and a child. There are children here, and a father, sorry. He just said, and a father. Okay, between parents and a child, between God and a child. There are children here. We are going to be talking about rape. It's a rough subject. It's not graphic, but we're not going to sugarcoat it because it's not a subject that should be sugarcoated. Neither is abortion. So just putting that caveat out there, and I'm going to let Jeff introduce us. Otherwise, I will railroad over him. So you go ahead. Start.
Yeah, thanks for the chance to introduce us.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yep, Jeff and Jennifer Christie.
Hi.
Thank you for having us here, guys. We've been married 24 years. We actually celebrated our anniversary last Tuesday here in London. I was very excited.
He said that, by the way, because he messed that up in an interview this morning. So now he's rubbing it in. Now he's like, I know how long we've been married. No, he messed it up this morning. Now he knows.
We have 5 kids together.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, 5 kids together. Our kids are 21, 19, 16, 12, and 4. And it's a big house. It's a crazy house. Nobody in the right mind has 5 kids, but there you are. So our life up until 5 years ago was your typical married couple with tons of kids in the house. We were both working full time. My wife is a sign language interpreter. She does contract work, so she's all over the place, does a lot of traveling. I have a very boring 40-hour-a-week job. But this testimony starts 5 years ago with her traveling for work.
Take it away.
Take it away, it's all you.
Okay. All right, so like Jeff said, I'm a sign language interpreter, and I do travel a lot for work. And I was doing a freelance job 5 years ago, and it was a 2-week-long assignment, and I was driving back and forth the first week. And the second week, I decided, it was a lot of driving, and Jeff said, why don't you stay up there the second week? Stay in a hotel. It'd be easier on you. It'd be easier on us. You're coming home really grumpy, and that was pretty much the gist. Just stay up there.
Safety was
right.
Why.
Safety. And so the second week, I stayed up there, and the last day of this 2-week-long assignment, it snowed, and we live in Virginia now, which gets a lot of snow. But at the time, we were living in North Carolina, and North Carolina gets like flurries at best, and every time it flurries, the state shuts down, and so the state shut down, and work let out early, and I make my way back to the motel, and the place looks like a ghost town, and everything, the school was let out, and kids are, scraping up snow on the ground to build little like snow inchworms, and people are buying, bread and batteries, and it's like the end of the world, and no one is around, and I noticed that in hindsight, just how quiet and peaceful everything looked. And I get to the parking lot of the hotel, and I don't remember exactly what I had in my car, but I remember I had my arms loaded up with everything, and I'm doing everything that they tell women who are traveling alone not to do. I had my hood up and my scarf wrapped around my face, and I'm making my way to my hotel room, which is on the outside that opened to the parking lot, the door. And I didn't know I was being followed. And I get my door open, and I fling everything to the ground, and I turned around to close the door, and there was a man in my doorway. And if we were watching a movie, this would be the time when the scary music starts. And I would know that there was something that would make me feel afraid, but I didn't feel afraid. This was a kid in my doorway, like college age maybe, and he didn't look scary. His eyes weren't glowing red, and his hair wasn't wild, and there was nothing about him that looked menacing. I thought maybe he needed help. The snow, maybe his car broke down or something. And this went through my mind in about a second, and then he punched me in the head. And women are told that we have this, this fight or flight thing, but you also have a moment of freeze. And you freeze because this is not something that happens to you in real life. You freeze because this is the stuff of movies. But I froze, and it cost me. I eventually fought, until I heard before I felt my fingers break and my ribs break. And I crawled somewhere inside myself, and I said over and over, whatever is happening to my body, he can't touch my soul. He can't touch my soul. At some point I passed out, and I woke up to the sound of a woman screaming. I opened my eyes, and she is, you okay? She's wearing the uniform of a hotel housekeeping staff, and she's trying to cover me with her coat. I'm outside in the snow on the stairs in the back of the hotel near the dumpsters. I realize I'm not wearing anything, a scrap of clothing. And as I try to sit up, I understand that I'm very hurt. There's blood on my hands. In the hospital, I'm treated for the broken bones, a brain bleed that left me epileptic, and some pretty bad internal damage that has required 6 surgeries to date to repair some of the internal damage. In the aftermath of this horrific attack, we were not doing well. The world was a completely different place than I ever thought it was, and I was a different person in it. I didn't know how to navigate life as a woman, as a mother, as a wife. I was very angry. I wasn't angry at God, but I was just angry. I didn't understand how human beings were capable of such evil. Jeff would come up behind me to hug me like he'd done a million times, and I would scream, I would double over, I would clench my fists, I would be taken back to that moment, and I would just try to fight him, and I would hear my little kids, what's wrong with mommy? And he would just say, I scared her. I just scared her. We told them I was in a car accident. We didn't know what to tell them. I was scheduled to interpret about 6 weeks later on a cruise. And we didn't really know how to get out of this. It had been scheduled for months ago. And the longer I went before I told the agency that I couldn't go, something horrible had happened and I couldn't do it, the harder it would have been to back out. There were several other interpreters who were counting on me and a huge group of deaf people. And so Jeff said, if you're feeling okay physically, maybe you should go. You're not doing well at home. I wasn't eating, I wasn't sleeping. It is warm in here. You're not eating, you're not sleeping. Maybe you should go. You'll be around other people, you'll be busy all the time. So I packed a bag, I went. Figured I'll do my job, he's taken enough from us. We need to get back into life as it was. So, day 2 on this 10-day cruise excursion that I'm supposed to be interpreting, I get really, really sick. I get dysentery, which is never a good thing. And so if you're sick on a cruise ship, if you've ever been on a cruise, they don't let you just mingle with the general population and get everyone sick. They don't do that anymore. They used to, I guess, but they don't now. They put you away. You're quarantined. You're put away. And so I was quarantined on the medical unit. I was put on the medical unit, and they'd given me antibiotics for 24 hours or something, and I wasn't getting any better. And I had this team of doctors who average age was maybe 12. And no one spoke English very well. And if you have experience with cruises, everyone's from a different country, and everyone signs up because they want an adventure, and everyone's a kid, and everyone's, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, and no one knew what to do with me, okay? No, basically their experience thus far has been dealing with jellyfish stings and giving out Dramamine, and that's what they did. And so I could see them kind of discussing my case, and they come in and they were we don't know, we're gonna give you an IV, and I'm thinking, no, you're not. But they're we need to give you something stronger, something is wrong, we don't know what's wrong. And then they say, is there any chance you could be pregnant? And I immediately said, well, no. My husband had a vasectomy years before after a very complicated 4th pregnancy. No, there's no chance. But then I stop, and I do a quick count in my head. And for the first time out loud, I say the words, I was raped. I said, you might want to test me. And she does. This poor little doctor just did not want to be there. She's looking at this woman who's old enough to be her mother, and she's holding this positive pregnancy test, and I see her shaking it, maybe it'll shake away, and I'm thinking, oh honey, that never works, and she's just doing this, and I'm like, can I see the test? And she shows it to me, and I say, that's a positive. And she says, maybe. And I said, maybe. I don't know what the medical schools are like in the Ukraine where she was from. I said, maybe you weren't top of your class, but there are 2 lines on this test. That's a definite. And she was like, look, you've been really sick, you've been in a lot of pain. We need to give you an ultrasound. We don't know what's going on. It could be a tubal. You could have some kind of obstruction. We need to make an emergency stop. We're going to pull over. And I always say that, pull over. It's not that easy when you're on a big cruise ship. It's not just like, we need to make an emergency stop. That's what they did. So 24 hours later, I'm in Cartagena, Colombia, in what looks like a basement, but they swear is a fully accredited, whatever accreditation looks like in Colombia, hospital. Not just in Colombia. It was lovely, very nice people. I was a little nervous. They wheel over what looks like this Frankenstein machine and this black and white, this huge ultrasound, and I have an interpreter there because I don't speak Spanish, and the world was just completely surreal, and I was like, I don't understand what's happening in my life right now. They flip on that screen, and there's this grainy black and white image, and it's like one of those old 70s TVs, and it slowly comes up, and I see a little dot. I've never been able to get through this part without crying, so I'm in therapy, so don't suggest later that I need therapy. I got it, I'm doing it. I see a little dot, and the interpreter starts to talk, and I know what that is. He's gonna cry too. He's not in therapy, he needs it too. And for the first time since the attack, I smile, because I know what that dot is. That dot was hope and light and life. That dot was my baby. Back on the ship, no one knows what to say to me. Everyone's been talking on this medical unit. Everyone knows what had happened. And one of the doctors was like, you might want to go call your husband now. Okay. So we had been emailing back and forth, so he knew that I wasn't well, but I was not about to tell him over email that I was pregnant. I figured that was probably at least a voice conversation. So I get him on the phone. How are we doing on time? Okay. I'm gonna hold this. He likes this part, so I'm gonna do this for him. We shared our story in December of 2014, and it immediately went viral. It felt like the whole world was talking about us, not really in a positive way. People were calling us all kinds of names, saying that we were idiots, we were letting bad DNA into the gene pool, we were, had some kind of rape fetish, we were stupid, we were, what kind of fools would, spawn a rape goblin, just all kinds of lovely comments. Among the positive comments, a reference to the movie Rob Roy kept coming up again and again and again. And I'd never seen it. But I eventually did a little research. And if you haven't seen it, I'm not plugging it, but the movie Rob Roy stars Liam Neeson and Jessica Lange. And Rob Roy is a 16th, 17th century Scottish Highlander or something. And at the pinnacle of the movie, his wife, Jessica Lange, is raped by his arch nemesis, okay? It's very dramatic, and she becomes pregnant through this attack, and she has to tell him that she's keeping the baby. So she says to him, husband, I couldn't kill the child. And he says, in his very, gruff Liam Neeson kind of way, Mary, it's not the child that needs killing, and it's like, wow, what an inadvertent kind of pro-life moment, he recognizes the innocence of the child, and he loves his wife, and it's just like, swoon. Okay, so it's a beautiful moment. Okay, so I mentioned this when I'm in Ireland, a year and a half ago, and Pre there repealed the 8th, and there's not a positive reaction when I mention Liam Neeson, understandably, because he was their hometown boy, but he comes out in favor of repealing the 8th, and so not a positive thing. So I have to clarify, I'm not on his side, I'm just saying it was this moment. Okay, so to see Liam Neeson as a actor in this Rob Roy role, where he's very, very manly and, very pro-life, and then to see who he was as a human being was very disheartening. So I'm saying, where are the Rob Roys in the world? Where are the real men who are going to stand up and say that they honor life in all circumstances and in all occasions? Liam Neeson was not one. He played this role, but he wasn't that person. So who is Rob Roy? Where are these Rob Roys? Well, I'm very happy to say that I married one.
I like when you say this when I'm not here.
Well, it's tough. Every time I get mad at him, I'm like, I'm cutting Rob Roy from the speech. I'm cutting it. I called him from the ship, and I said, are you sitting down? I'm pregnant. And there was just a second, just a hair of a pause. And he said, okay. And I said, okay, what? Like, okay, what? It annoyed me at the time, frankly. I was like, okay, what? Like, I need something from you. Okay, what? And he just said, sweetheart. He said, this baby's a gift. He said, this is something beautiful. Come from something so terrible and so painful for us. He said, we love babies. And I said, yeah, we love babies. And he said, we can do this. This will be awesome. We can do this. I said, okay. So, all week long on the ship, I hear how you're gonna go home and you can take a pill, you can have a quick procedure, and it'll be like it never happened. You can just forget about it and move on with your life. Forget about it. And these are some of the myriad of lies they tell women at their most broken and their most vulnerable. Abort and you can move on. Abort and you can forget. If you keep the child, who they don't call a child because then it's real. If you keep the child, you will always have this reminder hanging over your head, this reminder. Ask me if my son is a reminder. Yes. Yes, he is. My son is a reminder every day that as women, we can be stronger than our circumstances. My son is a reminder that love is always stronger than hate, and that who we are as human beings is not determined by how we were conceived. At the end of this cruise, I asked to talk to the doctors, the nurses, housekeeping, whoever would listen. And I just said, if you ever think about me again, if you ever wonder what happened to me, you want to know the end of the story, know that my husband and I had a beautiful baby in the fall of 2014. And I know, and there was silence. And the one 12-year-old Ukrainian doctor who couldn't read a pregnancy test, who had been pushing abortion all week long, just like looked at me for a really long time, and she didn't say anything, but she had tears in her eyes, and she had her hand on my arm, and she just stood there for a long time and then turned around and walked away. And I remember thinking, something just happened. Like something just happened in her. Like, this is powerful. And I couldn't understand why, but I knew that it was. And another doctor said, did you ever think you could be so strong? And I said, I don't really look at it as strength. I'm just a woman and I'm having a baby. I'm gonna let Jeff take a minute and talk about his experience of all this. So, go ahead.
Thank you. Jennifer, she's the strongest woman I know. She says she didn't know how she could be so strong with it, but I never doubted she'd be able to do this. When she told me that she had been raped while gone, it was hard. I didn't know how to cope with it. I didn't know how to respond to her. As a man, as her husband, it's my job to protect her. I spent a lot of time going over scenarios of what I could have done differently, how I could have prevented this from happening. Neither one of us are doing well with this. She says that she didn't understand how the next day people could get up and go to work and why the sun was still shining, because for her it was a different world. We didn't know what to do to move forward from the attack because it was brutal, it was horrible. And the line that people use when they say that you get an abortion because you don't want to see a reminder of that rape every day, I can tell you from knowing my wife and from talking to numbers and numbers of people, you're not going to forget that you were raped. You're not going to forget that assault just because you had an abortion. That doesn't go away. And she does have a lot of physical repercussions from it. She's mentioned the surgeries. She's going to have lifelong issues with epilepsy. But that's one chapter of our life. The other chapter started 6 weeks later on that cruise ship when we found out that we were having another baby. She said all I said was okay, because that's what it was. We had already been married 19 years. We had 4 kids already. My wife was pregnant. We're having a child. That's the simple truth of the matter. This was also borne out when we talked to our kids about it. People like to ask a lot, how'd you tell your kids? Are you going to tell your kids? What do they think of their brother? She said that we had told them she was in an accident. That explained away her injuries. We didn't want them to face the reality of their mom being attacked. But we realized that we were going to have to face the truth at some point. So after she had gone public and been speaking to some people, we knew the kids were going to find out. So we told them one at a time on their own that weekend when we said she was in an accident and she had been injured, she had actually been assaulted badly and hurt. And they were upset. They were hurt for their mom. They didn't like the idea of their mom being a victim like that. And then I told them the next part. I told them that their brother, who they had been brothers with for the last couple of years, was a product of that assault. And I can tell you honestly, they did not care. He was still their brother. They didn't see him any differently. They didn't think there was anything wrong with him or different about him because of that. All they knew was that there was a 5th kid in our lives, in our family. For some reason, we needed 5 kids in our house. So yeah, the rape was hard for us both to take, obviously, but the pregnancy, the kid, we both love babies a lot. And he rides on the dog, he writes on the wall, ignores his brothers, just like any other kid. The only difference between him and everybody else is that his siblings and his parents are going to be fiercely defending him if anybody tries to say anything to him. What? Okay, so one question I get asked a lot, what's it like raising a rapist child? What's it like raising a kid that's not yours, that's spawn of a rapist? And I tell them, I don't know. I don't know what it would be like to raise a rapist child because I'm not. We're raising our child. And that's all he is. That's all he's ever going to be. Okay, so one last thing I wanted to say. Thank you. Thought she just had me up here for eye candy. I want to address the fact that I'm up here speaking and that this is not just a women's issue, because I was raised Christian. I was always pro-life. My wife and I have always been, we met at a youth retreat. We've always been strong Christians. We've always followed the word and believe that life begins at conception. And I like to debate. Facebook and social media give me a whole new avenue to yell at people. But like probably every guy out there, you kind of feel like you're falling flat when they say this is a woman's issue. When they say, what if she was raped? When they say that you can't stand in our shoes. No ovaries, no opinion. Well, this has affected me. This has affected my family. I was not the one who was assaulted, but we are raising a child that we had not planned on. Abortion was never a question for us. We just figured we're having a baby, that's how it is. But it is something that comes up in a lot of women's minds and comes up as an option that the world puts out there. And when guys, pro-life men, try to voice their opinion, they're shot down very quickly. Pro-choice men, not so much, because they kind of agree with the world's rhetoric. But this is something that we have to make a stand on. We're fighting for the life of a child. Once that conception has started, there's a baby growing inside a woman. And this is a fact that is borne out in science. This is something that we believe because this is what God tells us. And we as men are called to fight for those who can't fight for themselves. And these children don't have a voice. And so we're there to be their voice. I can also address the question of what about rape? Think about the woman. We have, and what I tell people when they bring that up is you need to ask them. You need to stop using their situation as an excuse for your stand, because the vast majority of women who conceive and rape keep that child. And in the years that we've been doing this and the hundreds of women that we've talked to, I have never met someone who's regretted having that child.
And a lot of the post-abortive women that we meet who abort after rape say if they had someone who just supported them, who took a stand with them, who stood by their side, they would have made a different decision. And that's why it's so important for the men, for the pro-life men, to take a stand, to speak up, to not be afraid. We get asked a lot also, what are you going to tell your son? What are you going to tell your little one when he asks, why didn't I hear this sooner? How did I come to be? And for us, it's so simple. We're going to tell him that it never mattered to us, to any of us. You're not a rapist child. You are ours, and you are his, and you are wonderful. And none of us would be the people that we are without you. You came into our lives at a time of darkness and brokenness, and you healed this family, and you are a gift and nothing more. We're going to tell him that at the time, there were all these voices shouting at us, saying that you should not be here, that you are a child from rape, and you do not deserve to be here. And those voices were loud, but we loved you louder. More than half of all people who consider themselves pro-life make exceptions in cases of rape or incest. In our country, there are a lot of heartbeat bills being passed, a lot of legislation being passed, and people celebrating these laws being passed, most of them having exceptions in cases of rape or incest. And we're told that's good enough. And my son is going to grow up in a country knowing that most people will fight for the unborn, except for children like him, and that's good enough. And that shouldn't be good enough for us, because lives like his matter. They all matter. Lives like his are just as irreplaceable as all of the unborn. We're not names in the pro-life world. We're not Abby Johnson. We're not Melissa Oden. I'm happy that you guys are here. She's speaking too. Maybe you don't know that. I was like, we're going against Melissa. No one's going to be here. So it's nice to see people here. But you probably not remember our names after today. We're not published authors. We don't have movies out. We're not anybody. We didn't even finish college. My mom just passed away a couple weeks ago. But before that, whenever I spoke, she's like, you don't have to tell people that every time you speak, Jennifer. So, sorry. But our voices matter. As parents, our voices matter. Whatever your story is, whatever story you have to share, your voice matters. Because it is our voices together, loving louder, that's going to pierce the darkness, that's going to make a difference. It's a war that we're fighting. The other side, their voices are loud, but it's anger, and it's vitriol, and it's hate. We need to send back something that's different. We need to send back love and peace and truth, and that's what's going to make the difference. But we need to stand together, and we need to stand together with no exceptions and no compromise. But we march together. People ask, why is it important that we march? It's important that we march because we're making a stand, and we're making a stand together, and we're showing them that it matters. We're showing them that all life matters. People say that if you have an abortion, your son could be the next Einstein. Your son could be the next Beethoven. Maybe. Or he could, still be living in our house at 50 playing video games in our basement. That's possible also. I'm not hoping for that, but we don't not abort because of what they can offer society. We choose life because it's not a life that's ours to take. Because every life is irreplaceable, because every life matters. Our humanity is immutable. Our worth is irrefutable. All lives are irreplaceable. That's why we march. That's why we're here. Thank you so much for having us. Thank you so much for listening. Appreciate it. I'm sorry.
I think that one is probably the best. Red.
I forgot to add something. Isabel, I'm a sign language interpreter, right? And I sign a lot of music, and Isabel saw me sign a song, and she wanted me to record it, and she was going to show it here. It's a song about fear, and so we recorded it outside, and she's going to show it. And so I guess the theme with this would be that a lot of women abort out of fear, out of not having support. And so a theme for this, it's called "Fear You Don't Own Me." And so I signed it, and I think they're going to show it. And so again, just for oh yeah, it's called the breakup song, but the theme is fear, and so I think they're going to show that. But we're tying it in because of women who abort out of fear and out of not being supported, and so that's what we're doing. So all right, thanks again.
Sick and tired of being sick and tired. Had as much of you as I can take. I'm so done, so over being afraid. I've gone through the motions, I've been back and forth. I know that you're thinking you've heard this before. I don't know how to say it, so I'm just gonna say it, yeah. Fear you don't own me. There ain't no room in this story, and I ain't got time for you telling me what I'm not. Like you know me, well guess what? I know who I am. I know I'm strong, and I am free. Got my own identity. So fear you will never be welcome here. Take a minute, let it settle in. You probably never saw it coming. Something's gotta give, so I give up you. Oh, there's no room for you here, yeah, I've had enough. The no vacancy sign on my heart is lit up. In case you didn't hear it, here it is again. Oh, fear you don't own me. There ain't no room in this story, and I ain't got time for you telling me what I'm not. Like you know me, well guess what? I know who I am. I know I'm strong, and I am free. Got my own identity. So fear you will never be welcome here. Is there anybody out there just like me? Anybody out there? Anybody needing fear to leave? Oh yeah. If you don't know how to say it, sing along with me. Sing fear